Hello, Audra.
Hi, Mark. How's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm good.
I've been looking forward to this. Your story and our story are very interestingly coming together, and so I wanted to um, have this opportunity to sort of give people a sense for how these stories are coming together, because I think you're a very important part of everything we're doing here. Um, so first thing I'll do is just um, introduce you. You've been with us now for, it feels like going on, a year and a half or two now?
About a year and a half in
Yeah,
December.
yeah. And you came to us by way of our CFO,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
good old Tim. And then you have an amazing sort of personal history and, sort of an origin story, if you will. And I'd love for you to share that with folks, because it is relatively unique, but it's, like, I think perfect for who we are and where we're going. So if you wouldn't mind, helping the Founders Framework audience know a little bit more about you and your background, that would be.
Yeah, absolutely. My background is unusual for tech. I did not start in tech. Um, when I was in college, I really loved science. I was, a straight A student, very type A still in my life. And I loved helping people. I really wanted to make a difference. And so I decided to go into medicine. I got accepted early to medical school when I was at GW and stayed there for 8 years in DC. Um, love DC. It's a little different now than it was back then when I was going to school there. Um, and I was one of those people who, didn't really hate medical school. A lot of people ask me, like, well, it was pretty hard, right? And I'm like, yeah, but it was fun. And I have met some of my best friends still to this day from going to medical school. And when I graduated, before you graduate, you have to decide what specialty you want to do and where you want to and you basically go through this process called the match for your residency. And I was kind of between three things. So I was between OB/GYN because there was a little bit of surgery, which I kind of liked. And there was also some outpatient stuff. And you have the like added thing of like delivering babies, which was pretty cool. I really liked cancer surgery. And so I was thinking of going that direction. Um, I kind of liked the emergency medicine as well because you get to do a little bit of everything, but it's kind of at a superficial level and you didn't have clinic. So pluses and minuses there. You get to see some pretty like gruesome things and also some not so gruesome things. And then psychiatry, which was inpatient, outpatient. Every patient looks pretty different, even within the particular diagnosis that you're looking at. So I was kind of torn between the three. And at first I was like, okay, let's do OBGYN. That was the one I kind of went for first and decided it was a little bit too boring. I don't know. People kind of like laugh when I say like delivering babies isn't that exciting. Delivering babies when something goes wrong is more interesting, but it's also higher stakes. Someone's new little baby is going to have a problem potentially. And so, there were some good things, there were some not so good things, but it wasn't kind of challenging me in the way I wanted to be challenged. There's also all kinds of monkey business with malpractice insurance coverage. And there's just a lot, with OB that wasn't necessarily ideal. And so I switched to psychiatry. And I did both inpatient, outpatient psych at various community hospitals in Ohio. So my program was basically, my residency program was split over like 3 different hospital systems. And so we'd rotate from hospital to hospital. I had clinic with a lot of community patients. There were some really great things that I got to do. But at the end of the day, seeing like a new patient every 10 minutes in the clinic and having like this long list of notes to dictate at the end of the day, and then realizing you have to, contact Medicaid on like half your patients to try and get drugs approved that you want to give them. It just wasn't making me happy, because I felt like I wasn't able to make a difference because there was so much stuff that was kind of in the way of me really using my knowledge to influence people in the way I wanted to. So I had some friends who had gone into academics after med school. Some of them had started practicing clinically and then kind of shifted over. And I decided to give that a try. So I started teaching at some of the local universities in the Pittsburgh area where I am from. And I decided to also start teaching or tutoring, I should say, online for a company, a new ed tech company at the time. This was like 8.5, 9 years ago. And at that time, it wasn't super common for people to be doing things online, like tutoring. And so it was a little bit new, and the company was pretty small when I joined. And that was really great because it was kind of in that early startup mode where they didn't have a lot of engineers, they didn't have a lot of instructors. And so we got to kind of experiment and test and do some things that normally in a larger company you would not get to do. So I got to shape a lot of the product. And as we kind of started to grow, I moved into leadership and then became part of the C-suite for the last few years. And that's how I met our CFO, currently at 90. I actually still teach at a university part-time in the early mornings when they need some extra hands. Love still the hands-on and teaching lab, but I did end up making that jump from basically academic slash medicine, clinical medicine to tech. And it's been good. I went from ed tech now to SaaS and our AI company here at 90. Really, that change happened at a time that was just right for myself and my direct reports at my previous company. They had arrived. They were doing the job that I was there to do, and I felt like it was their turn to step into the role that I had been occupying, and they are now, which is really cool to see from another perspective. And I am here at 90, where we get to do a lot of different kinds of cool things.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's
yeah.
awesome. So what attracted you to this opportunity in particular? Obviously, you had some amazing journey, amazing success. Um, when you and I would say let's do it in a couple parts. So what attracted you to this opportunity? And then we'll get into sort of, big ideas, not always easy to execute, right? We'll talk about what we've experienced so far together, trying to move this thing forward.
Yeah, that's a good. So I'll start with the first question. What attracted me to come here to 90? So I really believed in the product. That was a really important thing. Like, if you're going to be part of a company that is driven by a product that you're putting out there for people, and you don't love the product and you don't believe in its ability to do good in the world, then you probably shouldn't go to that company and work there. And so that for me was very important. My husband had used EOS in his business. Still does use, well, he uses 90 OS now, but he was using EOS at the time and knew a lot about it. And thereby I knew something about it, even though my prior company was not using it. But a lot of the ideas behind EOS, I felt like were really important for businesses, especially new businesses where founders aren't necessarily that confident in what they need to do in order to be successful. And there's a lot of failure. And some people just don't want to take that leap to be a founder because of that fear of failure. And I felt like that like SMB market, there's so many great people out there who want to make a difference, and so many companies I feel like now are enterprise and want to get the big accounts, and that wasn't what 90 was going after. It wasn't what 90 was about. And I felt like there's a lot of potential for the technology to grow and really make a difference for people. So that was thing one. The second thing was you. So when I interviewed, I knew Tim, of course, from my previous life, but you have to, I think, work for a company where you really believe in the founder's vision. And I knew a little bit about you just from what I'd seen online. Tim had told me a little bit about you, just the good stuff, of course. Um, we had our interview. I think our interview was pretty short. I think it was like 30 minutes or something like that. I think you were at an offsite or a board meeting or something like that when we interviewed. Um, but I could just tell that it was a match, that what you were aiming for and going after was going to be something that mattered to me as well. And so I felt like that was going to result in cool stuff that we were going to be able to do. So yeah, I'd say that that's the thing that attracted me to 90, kind of a phased approach.
I don't remember this is my memory. It may not even be that accurate, but yeah, we had a short interview, and then I was like, okay, so we need to introduce you to the CTPO, and then he was going back and forth. I'm like, well, if you don't want Audra here, I would love to have her here, right? And I think we had that conversation as well, a little bit later on, and then Greg wised up and brought you over onto the product side. And my perspective was, that ultimately product and education were the same, but we had a different group of people working on developing all of our educational material. And so it was just a question of, right, what was the right door for you to walk into? So you walk in, right? And as I said, it's, what is that? 18 months ago. It's been a heck of a journey, right? I would say, and you should comment on this, my perspective has always been we have a relatively big vision. And it seems as if it should be easier than it is a lot of times. It's like, right? But but it's been hard, right? In a number of regards, in terms of really being able to move things forward, because I think both of us, there's so much we want to do, but as an early stage company, and even though we're on our 10th year next year, you only have so many resources, and so so I would say, with all the things we wanted to do together, as an example, you helped me write Work 9.0, and then you and I have also worked on several other books together. So we got that stuff going on. Then we got the product stuff going on, right? Then because you and I we should talk about this. So you came in and we decided to organize product really across 4 different tribes, right? One is the people tribe, which you run. Another one is the productivity tribe, which Kyle runs. Another, and I think Kyle's been on Founders Framework. Another is the AI tribe, and it's actually AI and Delta data tribe, right? Which TJ runs, and TJ's been on. He was on one of the more recent podcasts. And then the 4th tribe was, what was it called?
Everboarding, onboarding.
Everboarding, yeah. And then and then we really do probably have almost a platform tribe as well.
We do, yeah.
Right? So we have 5 tribes, and so you oversee the people tribe. And then my perspective has been that, we're I call it a learning hospital or a teaching hospital. You may, since you actually know what those are all about, have a preference for what it is. But when I think about the work you're doing and the work we're doing, I also think about the work we're doing actually just building 90, right? And talent and development. So you've been involved in helping us think through how we want to develop our talent and development system, our feedback system, our our career development system. So there's a lot of things that we're working on together with limited amount of resources. So, so when I say it's been hard, I think you and I have been juggling a bunch of, balls. We've been spinning plates on sticks, and then we've been putting the chicks back into the proverbial box. So there's just been a lot going on, and to say that it's and I call it hard work because I do think it's been hard, but I also feel like we have a lot of good things that we're working on, and that makes it easier to sort of deal with some of the ambiguity, deal with some of the grind that's associated with the work we're trying to do. So what's your experience been so far in terms of that? And then you can weave into it, working with, a founder who's, like all founders, we have our strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, it is hard. I agree with you that it's hard, but the problems we have are good problems to have. They're the kind of problems that I think a lot of companies, once they get to them, feel like, oh my gosh, this is really, really challenging, but it's actually not nearly as challenging as some of the other problems you could have if you weren't at the stage of development that we're at. So we have a lot of great things that we want to do that move the vision forward. And we're kind of in this point where we need to decide what we do first, what we do second, and kind of what the order of operations is for the betterment of our customers. And also so that people see 90 in the way we want them to see 90 as really a leader in the AI space. And in terms of resources, I will give a lot of kudos to Greg Vesper, my boss, our CPTO, because he's been really savvy about the tribes and the organization of the structure and product, and just very, very agile and able to kind of move from thing to thing. We never get kind of, locked into a roadmap, and that allows us to kind of move when we need to move, but also maintain some consistency and through lines when that's going to be important for the customer experience and also where we're headed as a company in terms of innovation. So hard problems, yes, but good. In terms of working with you, Mark, we don't always agree. I think sometimes people have the perception that we do agree a lot, and maybe we do, but we do disagree a fair amount, and it's good. That's a healthy dynamic. And I was talking to somebody the other day, not someone who works at 90, like one of my husband's friends or something, and he was saying, some founders just want people to say yes to everything they do. And I said, well, that's not what I was hired to do. And that's not what I'm ever going to do for Mark. If he's doing something that I think is going to be a problem, or I think we could do it a different way that's better, it's my job to say that. That's, I feel like, been a dynamic that's worked very well for you and I. I think it works well for a lot of the other leaders here at 90 and yourself as well, is the sense that I have. But, the best founders, I think, want people around them who are not always going to agree with them and are going to be honest with them about what they think. So It's been good.
Yeah, I think, that the whole founder mode and how a lot of people perceive founders. I mean, if you bring it all the way back, right? The founder has a vision. Founders have, good founders have visions, and they want to see that vision turn into reality. And the number one thing they care about is, that is the company, right? And they look at the lens at the company as something that they want to see. As I said earlier, they want to see that company, that vision turn into reality. And I tend to look at companies like, a ship. And so, when you're getting feedback that says, hey, there's a problem, right? Or there's a hole, or there's, we're heading in the wrong direction. And it's going to adversely impact, the ability to do the things you want to do, or for the company to become the vision that you have, then, I think, the vast majority of very good founders absolutely, want to hear about things, right? The old quote from Doc Rivers: average players want to be left alone, good players want to coach, great players want the truth. So, I do think that what gets confused sometimes is just that strong conviction, right? And that broader perspective. Sometimes it's like a lot of founders are NTs, right? Using sort of the Jung-Myers typology. And so they have this almost sixth sense for what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And sometimes, it's maybe they don't have the patience to sort of explain the context, or they don't have the words to explain why they think the way they think. But ultimately, I think everybody's trying to do, in a really good company, everybody's trying to do what's right. And then, as we talk a lot about, what's right for all the ideal stakeholders. I was in a session yesterday where there was some real interesting tension between a company that I coached from literally, zero revenues to over 120 million in revenues, and they were acquired. But the founder still has a significant interest in it. And we were having a conversation around the new owners, the new board, what they want. And it was clear that the company that I coached up until the sale was very much about having high trust relationships with all of its ideal stakers. It did a really good job of balancing the needs of the investors versus the needs of the employees versus the needs of the customers and their vendors. And so they started in COVID, right, 21. So within less than, about 5 years, they have an amazing reputation in the industry, which is why, the investors invested in it, because they want to extend sort of its product offering. But there was tension because you could tell the investors were leaning a little bit more into just the money side of the business and really pushing things pretty aggressively in terms of just how fast charging they wanted the company to be. And so we had some really interesting conversations yesterday around that tension. And, of course, the investor doesn't really think they're over-indexing on just growth and EBITDA. But, clearly, I shouldn't say clearly, but the founder was really, and the CFO, they were talking about how, the impact on the floor, right? How people are feeling a lot of stress because they're doubling the size of the operations, and people don't really know exactly why they're doing all the things that they're doing now. And as a result, there's tension that they've never experienced on the floor before, some behaviors that they've never seen before ever in the history of the company. So I believe that that you got to sort of really figure out how to develop, as high trust relationships with all of your ideal stakeholders. And I think that, sometimes people perceive, whether it's founders or CEOs, and you and I've had this conversation on several times. It's not like there's no data to support this, but that they're over-indexing on, on either their own ego, or they're over-indexing on just driving enterprise value at the risk of everything, and they don't really have that more nuanced and balanced perspective about the nature of their game they're playing.
Yeah, there's actually what you were saying made me think of to give everybody a sneak preview of some stuff in your new culture book, maybe. But that those kind of things do impact the culture when there's change like that, and can have lasting effects. And knowing the level of ambiguity that your workforce is used to and comfortable with, and where you are, is really important. And I think it's very easy, especially if you're a little more disconnected. Like sometimes, board members can be more disconnected from the operational people in the leadership. Sometimes you can, overshoot it and forget, or not really manage through the change in a way that helps preserve the sort of culture that you want. And it can cause some temporary or in some cases, unfortunately, permanent damage there that's hard to walk back.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because I think that, part of the reason I went down, I'll call it the rabbit hole on creating this book you're referring to, which is tentatively titled A Founder's Guide to Culture, is because, I felt like I needed to do more work than I did in Work 9.0 in terms of helping people understand the nature of culture. It's not just core values, right? And understand that, that as I wrote about in Work 9.0, or, you helped me write about in Work 9.0, climate actually drove the two predominant cultures. And that's really means environment drives culture, right? And so if you think about the environment, it drives the nature of the culture. And then if you think about what the environment is about, it's all about the nature of the opportunity you're pursuing. So if you look at our business, right, when we started it 10 years ago, because it is now 10 years ago that we started it, our big idea was to start by supporting companies that were getting up and running on EOS, which is upgrading their operating system. And, EOS at the time we started had been around for it'd been around for 10 years. Gino made it really super simple in a really, really good way. So it was a really straightforward program, right? That was delivered without technology back in the late 90s and early noughts, right? And then it was relatively straightforward. We were supporting companies running on EOS, and so not a lot of ambiguity, right? But we knew AI was coming. We were envisioned AI before we ever laid an ounce of code. And we knew that with AI, we could do some really cool things in terms of helping companies and departments and teams and individuals understand where they are developmentally, stages of development, stuff that you and I work on a lot. And that applies, stages of development not only applies to applies to everything, right? It applies to a society, it applies to a company, it applies to the department, it applies to the team, it applies to the individual. And so where are you developmentally? And then, what are the implications for, how to take that next step forward to go from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3, et cetera. And so we knew from the beginning that we could leverage AI to help people understand where they are developmentally and to help people understand the priorities associated with taking the next developmental step. Now, that was the vision. Reality was supporting companies running on EOS. Then comes along AI, and it literally does, change the nature of ambiguity associated with the opportunity that we are, not just pursuing, but involved in, right? And so, I think for our company and so many companies out there right now, they are dealing with higher levels of ambiguity. And from a cultural perspective, that does create change, right? And so we're dealing with it, right? We're dealing with it, virtually every, decent company is dealing with the implications of AI. They're dealing with it internally, trying to figure out where they should use it. They're dealing with it from a change management perspective. The employees are trying to figure out exactly what it means for them personally. And so, so what can happen is, a company that's things are relatively straightforward, not necessarily easy, but relatively straightforward, can find itself all of a sudden involved in something that has a little bit more ambiguity. And that's part of the reason why I went down the rabbit hole, was to help people understand that, that you have these dimensions of associated with the opportunities you're pursuing, some of its levels of intensity, some of its levels of ambiguity, and to understand where you are, because if you don't know where you are, it's hard to know which direction you should be pointing to go where you want to go. But I think the it's fascinating right now for us and for our clients as we are, I would argue, shifting from a SaaS company to an AI company. And just even that, getting that different perspective and that framework and helping everybody understand it is easier said than done.
Yes. Especially when it's human nature to kind of resist change.
Yeah.
And I think AI it has a ton of possibility, as we talk about a lot. But generally speaking, there's fear there amongst people, founders too, who are kind of like, I don't know how this is going to affect my company and my people and what we do. Are we going to become irrelevant? I was actually talking to an employee at 90, said that she was worried that her job, that maybe AI could do her job better than her. And I said, you're gonna learn to level up your game, and maybe AI can do some of your responsibilities at some point. I don't think we're there yet, but maybe at some point, these two responsibilities it will be able to do. But that's the beauty of us kind of moving into this new age of work here, that, the ability to learn something new where you are more valuable to companies than you are today is going to come in handy. And so that fear, though, I think is very common right now with this kind of unknown thing, in the same way I think like the internet was way back in the day, and how we're going to do work remotely. Like what we're doing right now, we would not be doing, and now here we are doing it. So it's something that we'll get through as a society, but it's definitely, I think people are definitely feeling the newness of it right now and wondering what that means for them.
I think the and like most everyone, I think, we're making, I don't want to say struggling, because it's probably a fair term, right? But we're working our way through all this right now, and the reality is I think that it's what we got to do a better job of, what I have to do a better job of is help everybody understand in the company that the changes that are taking place, they're just not changes that are taking place at 90. These are changes that are taking place within society. These are the changes that are taking place within the world of work. And so, what I think I could do a better job, and I would love your help, helping me do a better job, or us doing a better job, is, as you just talked about, right? Is what we need to do is help people understand that things are changing, and that it's important for them to, you can't stop the change from happening. So what we need to do is lean into learning new skills, right? We need into understanding the technology. We need to lean into, of course, challenging the technology where it needs to be challenged, because it is a tool, right? And what I've said for years, and I know you've seen me write about this, is our job is to make sure every single one of our employees are imminently employable. And this gets back to, we need to be having honest conversations about how to help them evolve. We need to take into consideration, where I come from on this one too. We need to sort of take into consideration what their level of aspirations are. I like James Root's, Employee Archetypes book. And so, some people, they just want to learn how to be really good at doing their job. And, he would refer to those as an operator. Other people are very much driven towards striving to take on more and more responsibility. And that's awesome. And then you have other people who just love pioneering and trying new things. And so you have them go and help you work on sort of pioneer-like work. And then you have other people who are more explorers. So, hey, help us explore these opportunities over here. And other people who are givers. And it's like, okay, so how do we make sure that we're all working really well together? We're aware of one another. We're leaning into the moments where empathy is important, because there's a lot of change going on. And then, we have a lot of artisans in our company. They're not only, the obvious ones, which I would say like, Dylan and Jeff, on the design side. But you also have a lot of engineers and product people who are artisans as well. And so just leaning into understanding who they are, leaning into helping them sort of evolve how they would like to evolve given their aspirations and personal situations. Because, by the way, those archetypes can change over time. You could have a situation at the family where it really requires you to be just predominantly just, sort of not worry about career progression. It's I just need to do a really good job of being a good employee, 9 to 5, and then I have other things that I've got to focus on: family, community, whatever it is. But helping people, sort of gain the confidence and competence to, as I said earlier, to just be eminently employable. And so that's I think one of our big obligations, and helping them understand that this isn't just about life at 90. This is about life in 2025/26 almost.
Yeah, I think that's very well stated. A lot of not just founders, leaders, I think sometimes forget that, and they kind of selfishly want to think of the employees as theirs, and they're going to stay with me forever, and they do a great job, and I'm never going to let them go. But it's our responsibility, I think, as strong leaders to think past that and think about their career along with them and partner with them to make sure that they are employable and they are able to get where they want to go in terms of their career.
And you intellectually it's easier to say than emotionally it's easier to emotionally to accept. So I have had now, I want to say at least somewhere close to 20 people who've worked for me who now run businesses, right? And some of them have gone and run someone else's business. Some of them have gone and started their own businesses. I mean, very, very successful people, very, very successful, right? And every single time one of them left, me, it kind of hurt, right? On the one hand. On the other hand, I'm very proud of the fact that I have, let's say 20 people who have are now, leaders, founders, and so it's not just about them leaving, going to doing something else, or going working for someone. It's about giving people the skills and experiences that ultimately lead to the confidence and competence to go start their own thing. Our prior CTO is a great example. Now, I didn't even include him in my numbers of my 20s, right? But Randy, has now started his own company, and talked to him recently, and it's going really, really well. And so just giving people, like I said, the confidence and the competence to take that next step when they're ready for it. In terms of the I always like to say the moment we're in right now, given your background, which includes psychiatry, right? These transitions, right? So that people are moving from a place of insecurity and fear to, okay, so this is the new world. Do you have a gut on, from a societal perspective, is this take years?
I think yes. Some of it depends, I think, on how rapidly the technology evolves. The speed is pretty fast right now. I think we're going to see it kind of level out here a little bit, where we won't see dramatic changes unless you're using AI on an everyday basis, and working very intensively with it. I do think it will take years, which is not people are probably listening to this thinking, oh my goodness, years, that's going to be hard. But we've done hard before. As a society, we've had things that have taken years for people to kind of get used to. And it's okay. Like people make it through at the end of the road, but their job might be a little bit different looking. And I think one of the things that we're seeing a lot is just resistance to it. Like, oh, it's not happening. My job is fine. It's not going to be replaced by AI. Well, it might be. That's okay if it is, because you have a ton of potential for your skill set to grow and you can learn new things. I think that a lot of people are, kind of tainted by bad educational experiences they've had, like going to school and ending up with a degree they don't use, or, the thought of going back to school to learn new skills, and the assumption that that is what you must do is kind of an antiquated view of learning, in my opinion. Not that higher education doesn't have its place, it does. But there's a lot of ways you can learn new things without doing that, without going back to school. But having that open mind is, I think, that thing that people have to kind of adjust to in the next couple of years. And as long as they have that open mind, they're going to be okay. But those who kind of resist it and just refuse to not do the job that they're doing now, they're going to have a harder time.
I think, one of the things you and I have been working on, not as much as I'd love to, but is assessments back to, understanding who you are and sort of where you are developmentally and where you are sort of in terms of, just the journey of life and where you want to go. And then, the beauty of what I believe AI is going to help us do better and better and better is help people understand, where they are and who they are and where they want to go, and then help present the opportunity to them in a manner that is highly effective, right? So the way that you present an opportunity to a giver is different than the way you present an opportunity to an explorer. It's different than the way you present an opportunity to a striver. It's the way, an operator, an artisan, et cetera. And so, I think that, part of our vision is to help people and teams and organizations and ultimately society look at what AI can do with a half full lens as opposed to a half empty lens. And then over time, we could become more and more effective at this. And then it's like, okay, so now you can explore things, right? That really do resonate with you. And then recognize that, this thing called life is a journey. And, what we want to do is help people just genuinely be in love with the journey, right? And to be looking at the journey as a learning journey, like lifelong learning, and to help companies help their employees appreciate and love the journey, especially the journey of work, because it gives us freedom. Ultimately it gives us freedom to pursue other opportunities if we want to, because we've done financially reasonably well. It's given you the ability to pursue other opportunities because you have a better, broader perspective on what these opportunities would look like for you, et cetera. So I'm a huge optimist, but I'm also pretty impatient with, I think we should be doing more, better, but I think that's just classic founder mode, right?
Yeah, you can be impatient. I can be impatient too. So
Yeah.
like it's not that's not an uncommon trait in tech, especially. I think a lot of people are who are innovators naturally just want to innovate quickly and not get hung up on other things. Um, you mentioned a lot in Work 9.0. You talk about adaptive systems and how, people and what they do in their work and their life are going to merge into one thing, and it's going to be just kind of one blended thing, and the ability to kind of adapt to what's happening in your environment is going to become a more important and critical skill. And I think we're starting to see that a little bit more here, where 90 is going from a SaaS company to an AI company, and that requires the employees that we have to adapt, not just in terms of the company, but in terms of what they do in the company with regard to other things they do in their life as a whole. And some people are going to feel like that's really uncomfortable, and getting them to a place where they're okay with that discomfort and able to work through it in a productive way that gets them where they still want to go, or maybe where they want to go looks a little different than it did 10 years ago or 5 years ago, which is, again, okay. But it's that kind of working through that we're going to be seeing here, I think, in like 2026 a lot.
Yeah. And, back to hopefully, well, not hopefully, the things that we learn by running our own company, we will do our best to help other people learn from some of the things that we learn. My hope is that we can continue to just help, more and more companies and their employees, as I say, confidently and competently move forward in a way that they love the journey. They appreciate the moment they're in. They're not overwhelmed by it, and it's these are moments you can look back and say, wow, that may have been hard, but that was super, super cool. Because I think that more and more people, I deeply believe over time, more and more people are going to genuinely love the work that they're doing, and that's why we exist.
Yes, agreed.
Well, I have a funny feeling we're going to do a part 2 and a part 3. But I so appreciate having this opportunity to spend some time talking about this stuff with you.
Yes, same. It was great being on. I look forward to next time, to part 2.
Me too. Thanks, Audra.
Thanks, Mark.